Hi, my name is Kendall Smith, and I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1961. I moved to New York in the fall of 1986 when I was 25 years old. I'd been there for a few months, and a work friend, Alfredo, asked me if I wanted to go out for a drink. So we went to the Spike, a notorious leather bar on the West Side Highway. We were sitting on the pool table after they'd closed it for the night when the bar door banged open. Snow flurried in along with the most beautiful man I have ever seen in my entire life. I looked at Alfredo and I said, the most perfect specimens just walked in. He cocked an eyebrow and looked at me and said, well, girl, you better turn around because he's standing right there looking at you. I turned. I was lost. In the warmest, most wicked grin. It caught me completely off guard, and all I could do was giggle and give him a stupid smile. He leaned in very closely and he said, hey, I've been looking for you for a very long time. And that was it. We talked for the rest of the night until they threw us out, and were completely inseparable for the next 6 years until he died. Stephen Ray Sansom was the only child of Donna and Red Sansom. He was born on August 29th, 1955, on a dairy farm near Ottumwa, Iowa. Pop music and theater were his escapes from farm life, and when he was 16, he began sneaking away from home to go to Chicago for weekends, where he would DJ with a group of DJs called the Dogs of War. Shortly after he graduated from high school, his mother and father confronted him about his sexuality, and when he told them that he was gay, they threw him out. Stephen took the $300 in cash he had saved, and he caught the next Greyhound bus to New York City. A 19-year-old redhead with a wicked smile was a hot commodity, Stephen assured me when he first got to New York City. He was a bike messenger by day, and he knew the entire city, from Battery Park to Fort Tryon, and a hustler at night. He would hang out down on the Christopher Street piers, and while he was there, he met Robert Kohler, Jerry Hoos, Vito Russo, Stanley Steller, Jerry Hoos, and Marsha P. Johnson. They got him involved in political activism, and they introduced him to Dr. Kenneth Unger. Ken Unger was a mainstay in the gay community, and he took Stephen under his wing and got him enrolled in Baruch College, where Stephen got his degree in bookkeeping and accounting. Stephen was Ken's bookkeeper and the bookkeeper for the People with AIDS Coalition until he became disabled. And even then, Stephen remained active in politics. He was an ACT UP and he volunteered with Lambda Legal Defense. December 1st, 1989. On December 1st, 1989, Stephen and I marched down 7th Avenue to Sheridan Square, where we took part in a vigil for World AIDS Day. The local news reported that over 1,000 people filled Christopher Park and the surrounding area. We burned candles, we sang hymns, we waved banners, we screamed protest into the night. Act up, fight back, fight AIDS. Steve and I walked back to my apartment holding hands. We watched the crowd slowly disperse from my ground floor window on Grove Street. We sat wrapped in the safety of each other's arms, and we talked. We talked about caring for our brothers when no one else would, and the pain of losing them. We talked about our community and our fight for equal rights. We talked about love and how lucky we were and how we would grow old together. I was lost in his eyes, and he began to cry. And I pulled him in and I held him to my chest. And after a few minutes, he pushed back, but he held onto my hand. And with his face down, he told me that he had tested HIV positive. The air left the room. The sound of people passing by dissipated into silence. All I could see was his face. All I could hear was my own heart beating. What do we need to do was the only thing that I could say as I pulled him back to me. 2 years later, Stephen was lying in bed while I changed his portacath. After I finished, we got him up and got him back into the living room to our favorite spot on the sofa, and I went back in to clean up the dressings. I was rolling the chuck up into a ball to throw it away when the needle of the catheter cut across the palm of my hand. I had been working full-time, going to school, a caregiver, and I was completely exhausted and sloppy. After he fell asleep, I called Ken, who is now my doctor as well as my boss. He had me come into the office early the next morning before we opened for the day, and I tested negative for HIV that day. 2 weeks later, I had a crushing headache and a body rash. I had seroconverted. Less than a month later, Stephen passed away in my arms. I never told him, I'm not ashamed. I've never been ashamed. I didn't want him to feel in any way responsible. That was over 30 years ago. I made it to 1995 with 7 T cells. I had names for each of them. We're supposed to have between 400 and 1,500. Steve and I marched in dozens of protests. We dressed the statue of Colonel Sheridan in drag the 6 years we had together for Gay Pride. We were supposed to go to the March in Washington in 1993, but he was gone in December of 92. I still went. I carried his picture with our friends, and I think I cried most of the day. Stephen had wanted to get back in touch with his parents, so we did. They reconciled. They said that they were sorry, and he forgave them. They came to visit us a few times in New York City, and us to them, and Iowa, a couple. And they accepted us as a couple. His mother would throw her arms around me and hug me before we'd part ways and say thank you. Thank you for being with Stephen. They weren't there when he died. He didn't want them there. We stayed in touch. His father died in 2015 and his mother in 2020. Medical science has taken great steps and found treatments, and I am undetectable. I am incapable of transmitting HIV. That is one of the reasons I decided to sign up for the COVID vaccine trials as soon as they became available. I feel like I owe a lot to the medical community. I feel like I owe a lot to my fellow man, and even more to Stephen. He loved me when I was alone. He marched into battle with me and our community when the rest of the world hated us. We made our home together. About a month after he passed away, I went and I picked up his ashes. And as Steve and I had talked, I put a small amount in this urn and I kept them with me. I've traveled around the world with these ashes. I'll never let them go. I've been in 4 semi-long-term relationships since then. I think part of my issue is I'm always looking for Stephen, and I've never found him. It's been close once, but it wasn't the same thing. I have written in my will that whenever I do pass, whoever finds me finds these ashes and they mix them so he and I can be together forever. So here I am, over 30 years later, a long-term HIV/AIDS survivor, and I am here to tell every person ever touched by HIV, I'm here to let you know that you're not alone. You're in my heart and on my mind. And we have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. But the war isn't over. So please, stay safe, stay strong, and stay happy. I love you all.